And Dee Takamoto, our gracious volunteer, will have some cards. The green means they have 1 minute remaining, the yellow means they have 30 seconds remaining, and the red means it's the next person's turn. So that is Dee's job, and the candidates have to listen, and that's where we stop on the 2 minute mark. And then after each candidate has had a chance to do a 2 minute opening statement, they start with the questions. The questions come from all of you. The only questions being asked are questions from the audience. Everybody has an opportunity to fill out a question on a card, and as you can imagine, we're not going to get to everybody's questions, but we've got two fabulous volunteers here, Dorothy Fry and Kit Hine from the League of Women Voters. They're reading the questions and they're sorting them by subject matter and making sure that each question that's going to be asked is a question that goes to all the candidates. We can't ask one candidate a question. Every question is answered by all the candidates. So if you ask a question, please make sure it's sufficient for everybody to answer. And then at the end, the candidates will each have a 2 minute closing statement. We're going to get through so much fewer questions than we'd hoped, just because the time goes by so fast. But if you have a burning question that wasn't asked or answered, please feel free to approach the candidates if they're available to stick around after the forum and ask that question, or contact their website or their their team and get your question answered, because your questions are important. Let's see. I think that's all my prerequisites. So we're going to begin now. So opening statements. The first person to go will be Theresa Bond, and you have 2 minutes.
Please stand.
Testing?
Yep.
Yes. Hi, thank you very much for all coming out tonight. I'm thrilled to be here and to be in the sitting at the table with the high quality of candidates we have. My name is Theresa Bond. I live on the summit off of Highway 17. I lived there since 2004. Prior to that, prior to living in District 5, I lived in the Silicon Valley and worked in high tech. Where I live is an unincorporated Santa Cruz County, but in Santa Clara school board boundaries. I am elected to my current Board of Education, which is the Los Gatos Saratoga Union High School District, and I have jurisdiction in both Santa Clara and Santa Cruz counties representing students. A lot of people don't realize that Los Gatos High has 23% of students that live in Santa Cruz County, and they have to drive Highway 17 every day to get to school, as well as come home to what we're living with right now. I live on a 1-lane private road that is a dead end. I've been on generator just like you both. I have a spring. We're heating our house with wood. So, at night we go at 11 o'clock, we turn the generator off, and we get up and turn it on in the morning. And we've lived that way for a very long time. So anyway, thank you for having me. I hope that you get to know me. I have 2 young adult children, and my oldest can't afford to live in our county, and he is a 2022 graduate of UCSC. So I really want to hit on the issues that are affecting the quality of life. It has changed for us from when the time we bought to live in this county to today. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next candidate is Christopher Bradford.
Thank you. Hello, neighbors. Thank you so much for coming out today. I can't tell you how amazing it is to look out here and see so many familiar faces. I mean, folks that I see in the stores, folks that I see around here who've been supportive and who've experienced what mountain living is like out here, and it makes a huge difference for us, so thank you. My name is Christopher Bradford. I'm a software engineer. I'm a small business owner. I'm on the board of directors for the Fire Safe Council of Santa Cruz County. And I'm a lucky husband and a father of 6. And I'm a person who, yes, and I'm a person who lives and loves here in SLB, specifically in Boulder Creek, where my family has put down roots. I'm running because I've experienced the things that are most important to the people in this district right now. I've personally experienced the housing insecurity. I lost my home in the fires, and I fought tooth and nail with the county, along with my wife and other community members who were working hard to get folks home. It's incredibly important to me. Infrastructure as well. I've been fighting to get clean water, safe water for communities in our area for years. And last night I flushed my toilet with creek water. So I directly experienced all of the things that the people here are experiencing. And I want to represent you as part of the community, as the tip of the spear. It's incredibly important that we have someone who is one of us in that seat, speaking to people, who knows what it is to be a person living in this area, who is present, who is transparent, who's ready to fight for the things that are important for all of us. I think that our community is ready for change. I know I am. And if you're ready for change, then you should vote Bradford. I'm ready to represent you, and I know we're ready to do this together. Again, I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you what we can accomplish together as a community. And I hope that we do, and we move forward strongly. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tom. Hello, my name is Tom Decker. I have 6 children and 19 grandchildren, and if you wait 30 years, you might too. My wife and I have lived in Ben Lomond for about 20 years. Our business is in Boulder Creek. Actually, our main business is Antioch. We do manufactured homes. We've been doing that, building manufactured homes and putting them on parcels, affordable housing for about 25 years. Not in this county, but we live here. We never wanted to build in this county because we knew the reputation of the planning, building, environmental health department. Yeah. Actually, just a show of hands, who in this room has had problems with environmental health, planning, or building department themselves or someone they know? Just anybody? That's about right. I've been building houses here for 2 years. After the fire, my wife said, let's see if we can help the folks here. And we started to. And not only that we've been in the Bay Area, been able to do in 3 weeks. It takes about 20 months or longer here. So we would like to, as Christopher has mentioned, change things, but change things from the top. It's a cultural thing. It's a thing of let's let people build rather than let's figure ways not to let them build. So Decker for supervisor, you've seen my signs. We keep going down, but we keep putting them up. Do vote for us. Appreciate that. Thank you.
And Monica Martinez.
Good evening. My name is Monica Martinez, and I'm running for 5th District Supervisor. And I'll never remember a moment in 2021. Like many of us, my family had been sheltered in place for over a year. We had survived the CZU evacuation. I was working from home, leading a large healthcare organization through the pandemic. My kindergartner and first grader were doing distance learning on Zoom, and we were in the middle of a 3-day power outage. I felt exhausted, abandoned, and I knew I needed to step up and do something. You see, I've been a public servant my entire life. It runs in my family. My dad is a retired fire captain, my mom's a retired elementary school teacher, and making a difference was a given in my family. I went to Cal Poly to get a BA in political science and USC to get my master's in public administration. And since that time, I've dedicated my career to giving a voice to people who have been left behind. This work brought me to Santa Cruz County in the San Lorenzo Valley in 2010, and since then, I've been leading change across the county. For the last decade, I've been the CEO of Encompass Community Services, our county's largest health and human services nonprofit. I have a $35 million budget and 400 employees, and we deliver services like behavioral health, substance use treatment, and housing. I've used public funding to navigate some of the most complex challenges facing our community, so I know how public systems can support a community and how they can fail us. And this is why I'm the right candidate at the right time for the 5th District. Our district deserves more, and I'm ready to use my deep experience to bring relief to our residents. But you don't have to take my word for it. I've received countless endorsements from Democratic organizations, labor organizations, the Deputy Sheriff's Association, Sheriff Jim Hart, Mark Stone, Supervisor Bruce McPherson, and I believe it's not enough to just survive here in the SLV. I want the SLV to thrive. So I look forward to answering your questions tonight. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to start the questions. We're going to start the questions now, and we ask that you hold your applause. You'll be able to applause again after the closing statements, but we're going to just do bullet rounds, and time is of the essence. So let's see, Christopher Bradford, the first question goes to you. And I've taken the liberty of kind of rephrasing this question. It's a good one, but I'm trying to make it a little succinct. So on divisive issues, how would you encourage collaborative resolutions instead of building animosity arising from opposing viewpoints?
So I think it's incredibly important that we remember that we're all in the same ship. And because this is local politics, it's easy to look at the person across the aisle from you and realize that's your neighbor. Right? So we don't have to bring the same poison that's happened in national politics into our neighborhoods and into our discussions. Right? We can look at the person across the way, listen to them, be present and be conscious of the perspective that they have, and move from a perspective of what's best for everyone. And I think that's key. We have a ton of things that are in common, and if we focus on those commonalities, we can find common ground between people, regardless of their perspective, in my experience.
Thank you, Tom Decker.
So would you repeat the question?
I will. Let me pull it out from my filing cabinet. On divisive issues, how would you encourage collaborative resolutions instead of building animosity arising from opposing viewpoints?
So is the question, it's better to get along than to fight? Well, I think it's better to get along than to fight. Ronald Reagan said something interesting. He said, as long as I have people that will agree with me 80%, I can get along with them. If they agree with me 100%, I don't want them around. And these are my friends. So we all have opinions, we sure we do. And as Christopher said, I think it's important to listen to people, listen first, listen to understand. And I say, where do we have a commonality? Right now, depending on whatever our political, personal views are, we're all cold because we don't have any heat. We're all mad at PG&E. Some of us are mad at the county for lots of different reasons. So we have that in common, working together as groups. And the 5th District is interesting because we have really no government. We have clubs, we have churches, we have organizations, we have networks of people that know each other that way. And only by getting deep into those roots can you really find out. People trust you, see your face, you're like, okay, well, here's my issue. So talking to folks, getting to know them, listening to their issues, and then sort of giving collaboration is probably the way to do it.
Thank you. Monica Martinez, would you like the question read again?
I think I got the question.
Okay.
Thank you. And I think I'll start by answering this question with an example. So when I moved to Santa Cruz County, I became the executive director of Homeless Services Center, which is now called Housing Matters. It's the largest shelter there on the corner of River Street and Highway 1. And in 2010, there was nothing more controversial in Santa Cruz than homelessness. And everybody I talked to had a different idea, a different perspective on what we needed to do. There were some people who thought services were attracting the homeless community in, that's why we have a homeless problem. There's some people who just wanted to throw money at the problem and just try to help shelter every single person. And it was incredibly divisive. And so my job was to bring the community together around solutions. We helped, first we listened to everybody, because everybody's feeling is important. We found common ground. Everybody cares about homelessness. Everybody has a stake in finding a solution. And so we found common ground on what brought us together, and then we worked together to propose a plan. We planned to house 180 of the most vulnerable homeless people in about a 2-year period. And we brought together the faith community, the business community, residents, of course social service providers, the county. And we succeeded in our goal to house 200 people in 2 years. And that's what you do when you have a controversial issue. You need to bring people together, you need to listen, you need to find the common ground, and then you need to be courageous enough to bring forward solutions and get results.
Thank you. Theresa Bond, would you like the question right again? Are you ready? Okay.
I would approach something in person if possible for issues that are decisive. If you can, look at the overarching goal that you're trying to accomplish and then listen to each one who has a different opinion. Often it uncovers actually what the obstacle is to solving the problem. For instance, when in my role as a trustee, we go into interest-based bargaining with our teachers each year, and we put up on both sides of the room answers and things that we want, so that at the end we have post-its all over the room, and we then look at what the needs are, the most important priorities are, and then we sit down and talk and see what we can do to meet those. So that is the way I would go about it, is first of all meeting in person. I think that being able to see each other and read each other's faces and what's going on personally, and then identifying really what you're trying to solve brings people together, because all of us really are dealing with the same issues. It's just that we may not all have the same information or the same viewpoint in addressing it to find a solution. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to quickly check in with the audience. Can everybody hear everybody okay? Is there any? Who can you not hear?
Tom.
Okay. So we need Tom to speak up a little louder. And are they okay sitting? Can you guys see them? Are you prefer them to stand to answer?
Yes.
Okay. Audience says. Okay. This next question starts with you, Tom Decker. You're encouraged to stand and speak up.
Stand and shout.
And this question is a bit lengthy, but it's a hot button issue that I've been told everybody wants asked. So here it goes. Yes. On January 22nd, 2024, AT&T submitted an application to the CPUC to remove all landlines in our area. Lack of communication was one of the biggest concerns during the CZU fire and remains so with poor or intermittent cell phone coverage in rural areas. How would you try to address this if elected?
I'm building houses in the CZU area. I carry 2 cell phones, different, let's see, a T-Mobile and a Verizon. Can you hear me? Okay. Open your mouth.
Just swallow the mic.
Put it on my chin like that.
Swallow the mic.
Yes. Good fun. Anyway, I carry 2 cell phones wherever I go in hopes that one of them will work. And my contractors carry 2 cell phones, and some have landlines that often work. And so I encourage them, never give up your landlines. Fight hard to do it, and then AT&T wants to take the landlines away because it's inconvenient and it's expensive. It is wrong. I know that several of us in the fire, we only could communicate with landlines. The cell phones didn't work, the towers were down. So taking our landlines away is a danger, is a public danger, and I will fight that tooth and nail.
Thank you. Monica Martinez, would you like a question reread?
Sure.
Okay. So the question is, if the AT&T is trying to take the landlines away, how would you address this issue if elected?
So first of all, this is an incredibly important issue. This is an issue of public safety, it's an issue of economic development, and it impacts this entire community. I was actually a part of a conversation just about 6 months ago with Congressman Jimmy Panetta. I met with members of BCBA, with Cruise.io, with Supervisor Bruce McPherson was there. We were up in Boulder Creek talking about cellular access, about broadband, about connection issues. So I want you to know that this is a high priority for a number of leaders, and everybody's going to line up to try to stop this action from AT&T. The good thing right now is we're in a moment where CPUC hasn't accepted this application. And so we are all in it to submit letters right now to say that this has an impact on us. I was just on the CPUC website, And they're accepting feedback today from residents like us. So I'll be sending mine, and I encourage all of you to send yours as well. I also recently had a conversation with a staff member from Senator John Layer's office, and he believes that the action of AT&T probably is going to be challenged in court. And so we're hoping that it's delayed or that it doesn't proceed, but it's really going to take the advocacy of us, this community. And as your supervisor and as somebody who lives here and who understands how important connection and communication is to our residents, I'm going to be a fighter for things like this, whether it's AT&T, PG&E, our cellular service, because we need to have access to communication when we live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Theresa Bond?
Hi. First of all, for the last 2 years, mine has not been working reliably. So let's just talk honestly. They've stopped maintaining them already. Now they're going forward with a public comment to try and get us to speak to them. First of all, I would go to the levels to look at what our policies are and see what is legally written today. The second thing is with the letters that we are already writing, and there are going to be many public comments, I think we need legal representation right now. And we need to say that we will bring a class action lawsuit. We cannot go without this line of communication. It is our final backup. On my road, I'm on my Firewise committee. And we actually this year, now our Firewise committee's been in place since 2020. My area has been evacuated twice. We were evacuated for the bear fire, if you guys remember that. So some of us have lived through it twice. We're very lucky that we were not burnt out. Very, very lucky. And I have great sympathy for those that did go through that. But I just want to make sure that folks know we have a telephone tree. Believe that? In 2024, our final backup for our Firewise group is a telephone tree using landlines. So we cannot go without these. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Bradford, would you like the question reread, or would you like to?
Oh, no, I think
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so this specific issue is one that myself and my team have already been working on. With Fire Safe Santa Cruz County, we try to get in front of issues that are going to negatively impact the community when a disaster strikes. So I've already met with Manu, I've met with Justin, supervisors who have an opportunity to fight for resilient communications infrastructure. And that means it can't all be high tech. You have to have a combination. You have to have radio. You have to have landlines. You've got to have cell phone towers where they need to exist. Right? It's not enough to just have the one thing. And so we got in front of that. I presented to them an idea using LoRa mesh networks so that people can communicate directly using those without having the internet at home. Keeping our landlines, advocating for the cell phone towers. This is something we have to get in front of, and it's not enough to say we're going to fight. We have to have real concrete plans that we can execute. And I've already started executing on these plans. It's incredibly important to me. The last disaster we had, I could not reach my family. I was over the hill working, driving home, and I couldn't reach my wife, I couldn't reach my kids. I had no idea what was happening or if they were safe. And I know so many of us have experienced this over and over. And it has to stop. It's not going to stop with words. We have to execute well thought out plans and policy. And I've already begun that. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question starts with Monica Martinez. And it's actually, many people have asked the same type of question. And it's discussing how many homes were burned and how few have been rebuilt because of the excessive and punitive county regulations. What can you do so that people can rebuild their homes after a disaster?
I have to tell you, as a candidate for 5th District Supervisor, this is by far the issue that comes up most frequently, because it's completely unacceptable, the number of homes that have been rebuilt from the CZU fire, and we have to do more. And what we're seeing is a symptom of a much, much larger problem. We have a government that is full of red tape, it is full of bureaucracy, and we need to open the gates in our planning department and in our public works department so that way our CZU fire victims can get back in their homes. So that way, any one of you that are trying to develop an ADU or put a fence up, for goodness sakes, is able to do that. And there's so much more we need to do. I know that the county's starting to pilot a unified permit center. I want more than a pilot. I want to see all of our permit steps under in one room with one table, talking to each other, so people who come in to get permits don't get told this. I also want to put together an advisory committee of people who frequently use the planning department, people like contractors who come up against challenges over and over, so that way I can get a monthly report out on what's happening, where the barriers are, and what I can do to help improve it. I have a long list of other things I want to do. 90 seconds isn't enough for the biggest issue in the county, but I'm doing the best that I can. Thanks.
Thank you. Theresa Bond?
Thank you. This is a tough one because it's a culture that's been allowed to develop within our government. And in order to change that culture, it comes from the top down. So it would require not only putting systems in place that take a look at the processes that are currently being used and how we can modify and what other counties do in comparison. Tom's a perfect example of that. But we have a staff there, and in order to be able to continue to perform the functions that we need to take that staff and give them an opportunity to see a different model and ask them to change. Because people go in and get different answers, we all know that. I've seen a senior citizen walk in with a plan for a 3-bedroom house, and I watched him navigate the system. And he was able to negotiate almost 40% off of what his permits were supposed to cost. He saved like $70,000 just by knowing what to ask. But he is one person, and he was knowledgeable. I'm sure we have many others that walk in and do not know the negotiation piece happens. So anyway, I think that it has to come from the top down. We need to allow people to learn a different system and then change. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Bradford, would you like the question read? Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Okay.
This is an old familiar one. So this issue is two-pronged. Theresa is right. On one end, it is culture. We've had a no-build culture for decades and decades in our area, and we're suffering the results of that right now. Folks who are trying to rebuild run up and headbutt this culture, and we're starting with a no. We're starting with, no, you can't do this, instead of finding a yes. And it doesn't have to be this way. In other counties, it's not like this. Right, so we can make change. And the second issue that's striking us here is that the people in position don't understand what it is to be on this end and to deal directly with the county. And I can tell you, and you probably all got the same email I got yesterday, inviting me to bring the planning department to my home for a free damage inspection. I couldn't believe that they sent that. It shows there's a clear disconnect between the folks who are making decisions and the folks who are receiving the effects, the impact of those decisions. And I'm one of those folks who's received the impact. And so I have plans to get in there, change the culture. I've run businesses for a long time, and I understand that you have to provide support for people, and you have to provide accountability. And that's the only way you get change in an organization. I've got the experience to do it, and I will. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tom Decker?
Could you repeat the question,
Sure.
please?
So there are people having trouble rebuilding after disasters, and what can you do to help facilitate the rebuilding back after disasters with the excessive and punitive, the perception of the excessive and punitive county regulations?
So on July 17th, 1891, there was a fire in Boulder Creek, and the entire town burned out, except for one building. It was burned down. The next day, the folks got together and said, let's start a fire department, which they have today. The town was rebuilt in 2 years. Now this, they had horses, oxen, and hand tools. They built the town of Boulder Creek that you see today, minus electricity and insulation, in 2 years. 4 years ago, the CZU fire burned, we estimate, over 1,000 homes. So far, 40 have been rebuilt. 40. This is ridiculous. We have computers, we have engineers, we have everything, but we also have government, lots of government. And I've been trying to rebuild. I've been able to rebuild 3 homes, and I'm used to building a couple of homes a month. I mean, that's what we do in normal places. The first home here, it took 20 months to rebuild. I'm good at this. I know what the problem is. And the problem is the county government is, we're not going to say yes until everything is perfect. And nothing's going to be perfect, so they'll never say yes. So we had 40 homes rebuilt of 1,100 after 4 years. Something is seriously wrong here. I'm going to fix that.
Thank you. This next question starts with Theresa Bond. And this is going to be a difficult question for each of you to answer because you're going to want to expand. But the point is not to expand. Listen to the question. So briefly outline your top 3 priorities. Everybody's got more than 3, but what are your top 3? People want to know where your areas of focus are going to be.
My top 3 priorities. My number 1 priority is to define for our entire county what our common goods are. What do we feel our common goods are? Number 1, an example is childcare. Childcare during the pandemic, especially for the independent, family-owned childcare centers, got wiped out. We are trying to rebuild our economic situation, and people can't go back to work because their businesses either have been so negatively affected that they don't even exist anymore. I mean, I call places before I even go, because you can go to some place and it's just gone, the company's gone. So childcare is something that will reap the benefit of getting our economy back up and running. And so I look at that as a common good. Other common goods that go into that, of course, are transportation. Every single person that I've talked to walking the district, our district and the county, have all said transportation, our roads, our safety on roads is a problem. And when we talk about putting measures on the ballot to fund our general fund, I want to see these common goods. I want to see a big poster. I want to know that we've agreed to them. And then as we prioritize where we disperse that money,
We're going to start taking
it
minutes
goes
from
through
your
that.
next
Thank you.
question. Okay, Christopher Bradford.
I'll try to keep it busy. So the first issue that's of massive importance to me is going to be housing and infrastructure. I consider those a single issue because they're intimately tied together. You know, the repair on our roads, our ability to navigate our neighborhoods, whether we can afford to live in the neighborhoods we're in. All these things are intimately tied. And so that's an extremely important issue for me. You know, who's experienced housing insecurity, right? Losing your home and basically being homeless for years and living in yurts, giant tents while you're trying to rebuild. It's hard. And I don't want that to happen to anyone else. So we have to get in front of it. The second issue is going to be disaster preparedness and disaster recovery. You know, as a member of the board of directors on Fire Safe Santa Cruz, I'm already at work on making sure communities have the resources they need and the knowledge they need to be prepared. You know, we don't have to lose our homes in big fires. We are not helpless. There are ways to survive, to prepare our homes. And if you note how few of us have been able to rebuild and get home, most of us were insured. If you have insurance, that is no guarantee that you'll be going home. So this matters. And lastly, cost of living. As a family with young children, I've experienced directly what it means when childcare is so expensive that it almost doesn't make sense for your partner to work because your whole paycheck goes to childcare. You know, and our schools are experiencing a disastrous issue where attendance is low. You know, the number of people who are sending their kids is down because young families can't afford to live where we live. It's very important that we address these 3 things. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Decker?
Of course, the big issue, I think, is the CZ fire rebuild. 40 homes out of 1,100 rebuilt is just wrong. It has to be changed. And we have to focus on changing the culture. We can't change the culture from the bottom. We have to change it from the top. That's the first thing, is to make our county more accessible, responsible to the folks that are there. Roads are very important. We have Highway 9, Mount Herman, and Bear Creek. If those aren't maintained and open, we can't get anywhere. So as a supervisor, one of my focuses is to make sure our roads are accessible, even the secondary roads, the roads that we get out of our valley when the major ones aren't there. The other thing that I think is very important, has been completely overlooked, is senior care. In our district, we have 3,000 or 4,000 seniors that the cost of living has gone up and up on their fixed incomes to the point where they just can't get by. And they speak to governments, but I think it's embarrassing for them. I'm a senior myself, and to reach out and say, I need help. The way we're able to work with it in our community, in our church, as we have a group, we find out what is needed with seniors and work with it. Churches United I worked with for years in that area, but more needs to be done. More person-to-person sort of thing. So those are my 3 things that I would focus on.
Thank you. Monica Martinez, your top 3 priorities.
Let me start by saying I'm going to name 3 priorities, but I'm also listening to constituents every day. So these are up for changing down the line. But the first thing that I hear every day relates to disaster preparedness. You know, we used to have disasters in this county once every 10 years, once or twice every 10 years, right? And in the last 6 years, we've had 7 federally declared disasters. So we need to change the way we're approaching disasters. We need to change the way we prepare. We need to change our culture at the county when it relates to these disasters, because it's the county's responsibility to clean it up. The second thing I'm hearing from so many of you relates to affordable housing, because we are not able to maintain our workforces. We don't have our essential workers. We are struggling because our children can't afford to live here, right? And so we need to do more to improve the housing stock and to get out of this long backlog of not enough housing that we've gotten ourselves into after a number of years of saying no to new housing. And then the third thing that I'm hearing more and more when I knock on doors and I speak with all of you is that you feel like our 5th district hasn't had a voice. You feel like SLV residents don't have a voice. And I'm ready to change that. And I'll be honest, it's true. I attend county meetings on behalf of Encompass all the time. And there's always something missing unless I'm bringing it up about the residents up here, because priorities of the county are really focused on our big centers, Santa Cruz and Watsonville, right? So I'm ready to be a voice and to give us finally a seat at the table. Thank you.
Thank you. And this next question starts with Christopher Bradford. And it says, as an unincorporated area, it can be difficult to access county funding for SLV, including for services and infrastructure. How would you ensure the needs of SLV residents are met?
Well, this is one of the reasons why I'm running. This seat needs someone from our area there to represent not just our needs, but to communicate to them what it is to live out here and what our culture is. I've been to many county meetings myself and had interactions where it was very clear that they didn't understand what was important to us. You know, they didn't understand why it's important, you know, that gas generators be allowed and not made illegal. Some of us wouldn't make it out here without it, right? We did.
How about losing propane?
No, yeah, exactly. You know, and we shouldn't be fighting with our representatives for the basic things we need to survive out here because they don't understand what it is to be one of us. You know, so I think it's extremely important that we get someone in that seat who's from our area to address that. And one thing that we have to consider as well is that, you know, we don't have a fixed safety net here. There are 3 pillars, right, to community safety. You got government services, you got nonprofit organizations, and the community itself. These 3 things have to work together and work together well. And for them to be cohesive, you have to have leadership that understands what the community needs and can motivate and encourage people, you know, to do their part. including these organizations. We've got to make sure places like Mount Community Resources and Valley Churches get what they need, because they do so much in the community. They're an important part of that pillar. And on the government end, the county supervisor is our only representative in government directly. We don't have a mayor in the unincorporated areas. We don't have a city council. It's just this person. I want to be that person for you.
Tom Decker, how do you ensure the needs of SLB residents are better met?
Well, Christopher said it all. You've got to go out and let folks know that we're here. I'm always amazed when I go down to the county and talk to these folks, and our power was out this week. And so someone at the county was saying, so how do you guys heat your houses? I said, well, with wood. Well, aren't you concerned that's going to pollute the air? We're freezing up here. Well, how do you run this? Well, we have generators. Are those 2-cycle or 4-cycle? I said, the 2-cycle. What about your carbon footprint? I'm like, where am I? So they really don't know who we are. They don't understand it. You know, I show up, I've got mud in my boots. Where'd you get the mud? Well, you know, we got mudslides on the road. So you have to really go and be the squeaky wheel. And the only reason why I've been able to get these houses built at all is that I'm a very squeaky wheel. So I intend to do that.
Thank you. Monica Martinez?
Can you read the long part of the
Sure.
question?
As an unincorporated area, it can be difficult to access county funding for SLV, including for services and infrastructure. How would you ensure the needs of SLV residents are better met?
Monica, excuse me, just a minute. You're going to all have to speak up. The only one who can hear you on Zoom is you, Monica. So if you want to be heard, raise your voices, please.
I'm used to being heard. All right, one thing I think you're hearing from all the candidates is that it's time that the 5th District is held by a resident of SLV, and thank goodness. All 4 of us live in the San Lorenzo Valley, and you're finally going to have that. So now you have to choose who has the experience and who's ready to represent your needs. I've been navigating county budgets and public funding my entire career. There are real constraints at the county, real budget constraints related to our property tax, related to how many dollars we get to keep in this community, which means we have to be really thoughtful and strategic with our decisions. I believe a budget is a reflection of our values. Where we spend our money is what we want to see. So if we care about getting our residents back home, we need to have a fully staffed, fully prepared planning department that's ready and held accountable to do that, right? If we care about our seniors, then we need to make sure that the SLV Senior Center and the Highland Park Senior Center and that all of our orgs up here have the funding they need to meet the real needs of our residents. I've been working with the local organizations up here for a very long time. I attend a monthly SLV roundtable meeting with many people in this room. It's all the nonprofits up here. And I'm very aware of the needs, whether it's the food needs, the shelter needs, our sandbags during the winter, seniors' needs, and I'm ready to be that advocate and to make sure that where our county spends its money reflects the values that they say they have, and I'm ready to be that voice for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Theresa Bond?
Once again, the budget is what the budget is. The budget that I handle at the high school is $73 million for 400 employees to support about 3,200 students. Every single line on that budget is tied to a disbursement, and that is what needs to happen here. It's when a request goes in, the priorities set based on the common goods that are agreed upon for the whole county. One of us is going to be added to the county board, and we are going to have to negotiate and work with the other members of that board to understand the needs of our district. And when that planning takes place, we need to have the mechanism right there from the beginning that we are a priority and that money comes to us. There can be no gray area, and that is something that I don't see happening, and there needs to be a monitor. I'm a big fan of dashboards and posters that show me, okay, this is what we're promised. Did it get dispersed? If it didn't get dispersed, that means there's an obstacle, and we need to go back and we need to look at it, and we need to find out why it didn't get dispersed. We are owed a lot of money from FEMA right now, a lot of money. I go to Washington once a year on school advocacy, and this year when I go on my school advocacy trip, I'm also going to stop into FEMA. I'm going to sit in their office. I'm going to ask them what it's going to take to get that money dispersed to our county. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question starts with Tom Decker. What are your top 3 environmental issues, and how would you balance these needs with competing interests?
So I know I'm supposed to talk about climate change here, and the raising of the tides and all of that sort of stuff. So I wonder, what can a supervisor do to change the climate? Well, not too much, but we can do a lot of local things. Coming to this meeting just now, the amount of traffic, the amount of dirt, the amount of landslides on the side of the road, that's something that can be done just in our local area, just preventing that. That's important. As far as climate needs, I think our biggest thing here are fire and floods, really, in the 5th District. I know that we're worried about global climate change, but locally, floods, fires, no power, that's our climate, that's our environment. What can we do about it? Carefully maintain our houses, keep our relationships with our neighbors close, get to know one another, work hard, carry chainsaws in our car, do local things like that. I think local things happen, and that changes the world.
Thank you. Monica Martinez.
You're welcome.
That was very funny.
Aren't we so happy? Look how happy I made everybody. I'm just kidding.
What are your top 3?
And I'm just about to talk bad about PG&E.
What are your top 3 environmental issues, and how would you balance those needs with the competing interests?
All right, I'm gonna gather my thoughts because I think we're all like, whoa. So I'm like, how do I look in the light? It's looking really good in the dark. All right. Well, the number one thing is I do believe that there's a lot we do at the local level that impacts climate change. In fact, every decision that the county makes overall has an impact on the climate, right? So I think that we have to be mindful about that all the time. The first thing that comes to mind really is related to vegetation management. We do know we need to maintain our forests, but we need to do it in a sustainable way. We need to be holding PG&E accountable for the way that they think that they're going to manage our forests, because it's not effective, it's not working. And we also need to work with other public sector agencies, the state parks, UCSC, really any district that has any forested space, to make sure that we are maintaining our vegetation in a safe way. The next thing has to do with sustainable transportation, because we're all in our cars. We're in an area that relies on cars. So we need to think about how are we building, where are we building that helps to support sustainable transportation, public transit, investing in the roads that are important, and also I would love to see more EV charging stations up here in the valley. And then the third thing relates to where we grow and how we grow, because the county does make those decisions, and we need to be making sure that we're building our affordable housing, our higher density in spaces where it's appropriate, where we can rely on mass transit. There are so many more plans I want to tell you about, but I'm out of time, so I didn't get to the second half of your question. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Theresa Bond, what are your top 3 environmental issues, and how would you balance their needs against competing interests?
First of all, I'm on the environmental literacy collaboration for the school board members. I'm the only trustee on it. So first of all is educating everyone and getting it in our academic programs so that it grows with our children. The second thing is for our county in general, we have all this rain coming down, and where are we storing it right now? So exactly, I would like to see a like program to our Firewise but instead focused on water. Water is our precious. We go through ups and downs where we are in drought, and we need the same type of focus and community involvement in water as we do other things. Then the coast. My family also owned a rental property in the Rio Del Mar area, and you can see the ocean has not receded since the atmospheric storms from last year. Not just this year, last year. So this is real, it's honest, it is not coming in by the inches, it's coming in by the yards. So we need to look at building back to sustain those areas. I've seen homes that were demolished last year rebuilt exactly the same, and they are going to end up being destroyed again. So we need to be conscious of how we are resilient and put that in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Bradford, what are your top 3 environmental issues and how would you balance those things with competing interests?
So I believe in practical environmentalism. I think the first thing that I would address is fire mitigation, because fire mitigation is environmentalism. If any of you ever came back to our communities after being evacuated for the fire, before it was all recovered, and attempted to breathe, you know exactly how brutal and how heavy the amount of toxins and heavy metals are that seep. Sorry, thank you. That's a big difference. All right. So yeah, it makes a huge difference, right? If we stop homes from burning, if we stop infrastructure from being destroyed, then we'll make sure that our water table stays safe. We'll make sure that our air is breathable. You know, I think that environmentalism starts at home. It starts where you are. And if everyone approaches it that way, then we'll be covered. The second thing I would address is about water. You know, the Santa Margarita water table is our primary source of water. It's about 30 miles wide, and it supplies most of SLV and Scotts Valley and some of Santa Cruz. And unfortunately, we get some impaction from seawater. There's a lot that's going on with our water table that we need to be active in addressing our needs there. So if we take care of that, we take care of us as well. There has to be an integration between us and nature, a natural integration. And that'll make our environmentalism practical. And the last thing would be advocacy that's environmental. During COVID, when my kids were stuck at home, a little bit after that, there was a program they could join that would take them out into the county parks, take them out to Big Basin and teach them a new language while they got to explore nature and connect directly with it. And that's important for people to advocate. Thank you. How's that?
Tom, did you have a chance to go? I lost my.
Started with that.
Okay, so
Ready
it's
to do
not.
it again?
No.
Mike was done.
I was thinking it is Monica Martinez to start. Thank you. So this question is, what resources does the county have that might be refocused on dealing with infrastructure issues? And you can broaden that question a little bit to just say, are you aware of funding? If you're going to pull from somewhere, where do you think you can pull money from that would help the infrastructure in this area?
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, we're a county that really has limited funding, and we have a lot of needs. So it's really difficult when you look across everything that the county is obligated to do. There's very little unrestricted funding left. And so what I think we need to do is we need to be looking out across the state and across the federal government to bring in more funds to our county. I know how to write grants or how to leverage dollars, whether they're Medi-Cal dollars, SAMHSA dollars, FEMA dollars, whatnot, bringing them into our community so that way we can continue to invest in our infrastructure and invest in long-term improvements. Another thing that I mentioned earlier is related to the percentage of the property tax that we get to keep. Due to Prop 13, we got stuck at a very low level of property tax back in the 70s. And there's a slight movement right now to possibly change that formula. Some people said it would never happen in their lifetime, but we actually have the Speaker of the State Assembly who lives in our area right now, Robert Rivas, and he's making this an issue. So there's kind of a rural movement that I want to advocate for and be a part of to possibly bring more property tax dollars into our community so that way we can invest in this infrastructure that's been long deferred because we haven't been able to afford to do it. The dollars aren't going to be able to come from here. We need new dollars, state dollars, federal dollars, or our fair share of our property tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Theresa Bond, where would you pull money from to help the infrastructure in this area?
Number one, I'd go after the federal funds that haven't reached us. I think that putting resources on that, putting people on a plane, sending them in Washington until we get some answers is very important and effective. You have to be in their face. But the money needs to come. As for infrastructure, when we set priorities, we're gonna have to make some tough decisions to say, we're not gonna do some of these plans for the future right now. This is not business as usual. We are recovering from disaster after disaster. We have a county budget that is running on empty, and we need to find the money, and then after we find it, we need to say some of these things have got to wait. We have to set our priorities on the safety, the transportation issues, our roads, response, being ready for the next disaster that's coming on us. And it's not easy to say no. But what I haven't seen is saying no to some of the lesser priorities. And that means working with the other board members on the Board of Supervisors and making our needs known and asking them to please vote to support us when they disperse and plan the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Bradford?
So I've run a number of businesses, managed a number of businesses, and I've experienced what it is to have a tight budget. Our budget is tight. It's going to stay that way. So the best thing we can do is increase our income. And we can do that with grant writing. We can do that by going after federal funds and state funds that are there, that are accessible to us if we are aggressive in writing grants and going after that money. In the nonprofit I run, grant writing makes a huge difference in how much money ends up in the pockets of the nonprofit itself, and it results in the community. That's one thing that we can do to make a big difference. Prop 13, as Monica mentioned, we get 13 cents on the tax dollar. But changing that is not going to be enough, because the rest of that dollar goes to other things in the county. Right? It goes to schools, it goes elsewhere. So it's not going to be enough to rob Peter to pay Paul. Right? We have to be creative. We have to look at real solutions that are going to result in an increase in the amount of resources we have to deal with these kind of problems. So again, grant writing, careful approaching, a careful approach to the budget, and bringing home that money from the federal level to the state level to the local level is what's going to make a difference.
Thank you. Tom Decker?
I'm impressed with people that think we can get money from the federal government. The federal government owes $44 trillion. They also owe $164 trillion unfunded liabilities. The state government owes $60 billion, $260 billion unfunded liabilities. The county itself has $43 million of unfunded liabilities. So going to the government saying, let's get more money, that's our job, of course, but I think the chances of doing that are being increasingly less successful. We all know about trying to get our FEMA money. Good luck with that. So I build houses, and the other day, a couple weeks ago, I was driving down the road and I saw a couple of county trucks, a county car, and 7 or 8 guys from the county standing around looking into a hole, and there was a guy in the hole with a shovel, and there was a supervisor with the thing, and here they were figuring out something. And the traffic was stopped, and I watched them do that, and on the way back, I saw the same folks sort of still figuring it out. And I figured, if they work for me, they'd all be fired. This is county money, folks. This is county money. Don't run and get more money. Let's be more efficient with the money that we have. You would have fired him too.
Thank you. This question now starts with Theresa Bond. I'm going to kind of broaden this question. Everybody's talked a little bit about grant writing, and let each of you address what is your familiarity with grant writing, and what would you do to bring grant money in for emergency access?
My familiarity is through the education system. We bring in all kinds of money on different grants, but it takes time. It takes resources that are dedicated to write the grants. And so many of the pieces of legislation and grants that are put in place by the government have so many strings attached that, people can't do it. unless you have a full-time person monitoring the process, reporting the process, so it's not worth doing. But things like the infrastructure bill, things that I have learned by going to Washington and sitting down and talking to people, is that it takes at least 9 months to 12 months after a bill is passed for them to actually have the process in place where you can even apply for it. And then finding the person that can explain to you how to apply for it correctly so that it doesn't get bounced back to you. So it's a process. There's money in the infrastructure bill, and that is one of the things that we definitely can go after, but it means taking resources from something else, and they have to have the correct knowledge and skills to do this, so that when we do apply for these things, we don't get stopped and they come to us. But it is an expensive proposition to do that, but it can be well worth it. We have many programs that have been successful for wellness centers, as an example, at our schools that are funded off of grants. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Bradford, what is your familiarity with grant writing, and how would you use it for emergency access in this area?
So I'm extremely familiar with grant writing. The nonprofit that I help run, Fire Safe Santa Cruz, was just awarded a $1 million -1 grant. -1 is to save us in some of the paperwork issues that occur when you get $1 million. That is useful, and that we're going to be able to put to work for the community. And we got it by doing our research, by having a person who is extremely skillful at grant writing, write the grants, and setting up the infrastructure you need to manage the grant. And so a grant isn't just a gift of money, right? You have to have a use case. You know, you have to be able to do the reporting. You have to set up the infrastructure to manage the grant. You know, so it's not just writing a letter out and hoping money comes back. It takes skill, and it takes organization, and it takes expertise. And I plan on putting the expertise of the folks on my staff to work and making it a priority, right? Because money's not going to come from nowhere. We have to be aggressive. We have to fight and get after it. And there are a lot of grants that we slept on that we might have been able to put to work in our communities if our offices had the resources to spend the time going after those grants. So first you have to be aware of them. You have to do the research. Then you have to manage them correctly. You know, and then you have to put them to work in the field and make sure that you've earned the grant. And so that's how I'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Becker? I'm just going to say Decker.
Decker, like Black and Decker, the side of the family that didn't get the stock. I'm very familiar with grant writing. In my younger years, when my children were younger, we started charter school, and later we got $3 million worth of grants. The charter school is now 5 charter schools. Also was the president of the symphony board, on the board for a dozen years, and we used grant writing to build a concert hall. I am not impressed with grant writing. I'm not impressed with it for the amount of effort, the amount of work. The production and the return is minimal. 70% of the money we raised was from the private sector. We'd go and say, I put up 10 grand, and then he'd go and talk with the folks and said, will you match my gift? That's what we did. That's how we built our halls. That's how we built our schools. You go to people with money who are invested and say, can you help me? Rather than sending someone writing grants, hope that someone may fund you. That happens, but not often enough. I think I'm done with this. Thank you.
Monica Martinez?
Thank you for the chance to answer this question. So my organization is a $35 million organization, 95% which is publicly funded, definitely through grants and contracts. So I'm extremely familiar with how public funding works. So I thought I'd share another example. So I am currently working on a capital project in Watsonville to expand behavioral health access to the Latinx community in Watsonville. I've currently raised 13 of the $14 million that's required for that project. And one grant was a $9.2 million grant from the state. So we applied for this really special funding that was intended for behavioral health infrastructure, and we submitted what I thought was the best application, and I all my eggs in that basket, and we got a letter, we didn't get it. And I looked at all the state grants, and I saw that our region was allocated $14 million, our Central Coast region, and guess how many dollars our region got? 0. Our entire region was overlooked, and parts of Southern California got all our money. And so first I'm like, oh, I hope the board doesn't fire me. Second, I was like, I've got to go after this money. So I got on the phone. I called John Layard's office. I called the governor's office. I called DHCS. I called everybody I could. What's happening here? What's happening with our Central Coast funding? And they were alerted and very concerned that our area was overlooked. They encouraged us to apply again. There was another round of funding. I applied, 3 other projects in the Central Coast applied. All of us got funding. We got our $9.2 million. When I will knock down the door to bring funding into this community when I'm your supervisor, and I have the experience to do it, and I want to tell another story, but I'm not going to be able to. Thank you so much.
Sorry. Hold that thought. We'll have one of our questions coming up will be allowing you to expand on a prior question you didn't have enough time for. So this question's a little bit of a softball. You guys will all love it. And several people have asked that you describe your recent, relevant, rigorous, professional activity. What makes you qualify? That's what they want to know. So it's kind of your opening and your closing put together, but you got 90 seconds. And this one starts with Christopher Bradford.
All right, I do love this question. I'm qualified because of what I've experienced. I've worked hard as a businessman to feed my family. I've worked hard as an engineer to solve problems. And I've worked hard as a member of our community to take care of the people in our community and to close some of the gaps that we experience in both service and execution from government. Right, so I've been in the trenches with you, you know. The CZU happened and I lost my home. But we got after it, we fought with our community. Some of us made it back, some of us haven't. But not through lack of trying, not through lack of organizing, right? We had difficulties with water. I got together with my community, we organized, we did our best to move things forward with the Big Basin water and to start to make positive change so that people aren't doing what we had to do yesterday and flush their toilets with creek water. You know, I've been working very hard for the community, and I've experienced exactly what it is when the county fails you, and I've experienced what it is when community comes together to solve problems. And I know that we can do more together than we can apart. And that's something that drives me. You know, this experience and the fact that this is my home. This is where my children are growing up. And if things go well, they'll be able to live here 2, 3, or 4 years when they graduate. And if they don't, they'll have to move away and I won't see them very much. And, you know, it breaks my heart to think. And I know a lot of you have experienced exactly that, where your kids can't afford to stay out here. You know? So I'm deeply involved, I'm invested. This is my home just like it's your home. And I want to fight for it.
Thank you. John Decker, what is your recent, relevant, rigorous professional activities that make you fit for this position?
Well, I've spent the last 2 years building homes for people who lost homes in the fire, so that's been my recent activity. And what I've learned is something quite amazing. I've gotten to know the fire inspectors, or the building inspectors, and we finally got one of our houses permitted and built 20 months later. This is a house that would normally take me about 3 weeks to build. And I lost $100,000 doing it, but that's beside the point. So I got to the point where we're ready to sign the final, we finally get the sign, and the inspector looks around and he says, "This is pretty nice." He says, "I'm glad we did this. This is the first home that I permitted." 2 years, this is the first home I permitted. I'm kind of open-mouthed. I said, "Why is that?" He says, "I think people just give up." Really? They lived here 60 years, they built their home, they built our schools, and now they just give up? He thought it's like, well, they get a new hobby. No, they don't. They run out of money, they run out of energy, they just get exhausted, they die, they move away, they don't give up. So my recent activity has been trying to figure out how the system works. And I know how it works, and I know it needs to be fixed, and I sure do. So you should vote for me.
Monica Martinez, what is your recent, relevant, rigorous professional activity that qualifies you for this position?
So I've been a public servant my entire life. Growing up, I grew up in Bakersfield, and I experienced firsthand what it was like to not have a voice and to be discriminated against. And I decided then at a young age that I was going to dedicate my life to giving a voice to people who don't have a seat at the table and feel like they've been forgotten. And when I'm talking to SLV residents, I hear a lot of that. I hear that we feel like we've been forgotten. But I also have both the professional and the personal experience that I think makes me most qualified. I mean, professionally, I run the county's largest contractor, largest health and human services nonprofit in the county, and so I'm exceptionally familiar with county budget. I've attended the Board of Supervisors meetings for years. I have the relationships with the existing board, existing city managements across the county, existing law enforcement agencies. I have the relationships. Our state and federal representatives, I have the relationships. And personally, I think I'm qualified as well. I'm a mom. And I think moms get things done, okay? I think it's time to have a mom's voice on the Board of Supervisors. I'm also, I don't always share this, but I'm a foster parent, and I've adopted my kids. And so I know what it's like to be on the receiving side of our county's Health and Human Services Department. And that really informs my leadership as a CEO running Health and Human Services. And these are the things that I will bring to the table when I'm representing all of you as your next supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you. Theresa Bond, what is your recent, relevant, rigorous professional activities that prepares you for this position?
Thank you. Well, of the four of us, I'm the only one that is currently a public official. I've been elected 3 times, first in my elementary district, 2 consecutive terms, and now in my high school district. The reason why I'm running for this is I can do more for my community jumping to the next level. I cannot do all the things that I see our community needed from a student perspective. But I work with families every day on every imaginable issue. I governed through the pandemic at the hardest time where we had to make decisions every day. During the pandemic, while we were governing, I had 3 meetings a day. I was on the government officials call that came from Sacramento. At noon, I was on the County Board of Education call, and I volunteered for the California Public Health and became a contact tracer, case investigator. So I was in the public health database, and I was making calls to people that were on shelter in place and talking to them. So I've had all of that recent experience. I work in government, so everything that I do is based on government policy. I am trained to do that. I've done that now for quite some time. And the learning curve to become a supervisor isn't as easy as what folks might think. It takes time to become an effective supervisor and learn all the ins and outs of how you apply the policy and the role that you have. I already have a lot of that down, so I think my experience both in high tech and in public service, but as an elected official, make me qualified. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, this one starts with Tom Decker. And I'm going to make this question a little bit more open than it's drafted. It's about the septic tank nightmares. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? So the question is what can you do to help? There are folks that have to have theirs replaced or upgraded, and it's prohibitively expensive. Do you have any solutions or ideas that can help this issue?
Well, let me lay out the problem. In the San Lorenzo watershed, there are 14,000 private septic systems. It's the densest septic systems in the state. And at the mouth of the San Lorenzo River, by the boardwalk, they find human feces in the water every time. They assume that it's coming from these 14,000 septic systems. They don't count the 50 to 75 homeless people that live on the river, that use the river as an open toilet. They don't count them. Beside the point. One of my customers lives 6 miles from the river, up and down some mountains on the other side of the park. They're putting in an ADU. They're going to be required to put in a $150,000 enhanced system that's monitored 24/7, $500 a month, on the off chance that a drop of water will get out of our system, go up and down 6 miles into the river, and get into the river, this is the land. This is what the Board of Supervisors would like to impose upon all the real property in the county, in the unincorporated county. It's unbelievable. They tried it last year. The Board of Realtors and myself and several others were able to beat it down. They do it with ADUs, but not trying to do it with real property. That is a ticking time bomb.
Thank you. Monica Martinez, how would you address the septic tank issues that where it's prohibitively expensive to replace or upgrade them?
Yeah, I'm gonna elaborate a little bit on what happened last year. The Board of Supervisors did pass a new enhanced septic policy, and they put it at the point of sale. So what that meant is anybody, like all of us in this room who rely on a mortgage to buy a home, particularly first-time home buyers, had to do this improvement if it was needed at the point of sale. And all of a sudden, first-time home purchases were stopped. Because first of all, it's about $100,000 to do this review. And also there's only like 1 or 2 providers in the entire region who can do it. And so it was time prohibitive and it was cost prohibitive. So what that tells me is the county really missed the opportunity to listen to the stakeholders before proposing this policy. They should have listened to realtors, they should have listened to property owners, they should have listened to experts, they should have listened to the people who do the work, you know, can they do the work, and propose other options. I am glad that they've sort of leaned back or taken a step back from that because they are trying to loosen the regulations, but we still have problems. So as a supervisor, I want to propose solutions. There are solutions out there. There are creative ways that other communities are doing compostable toilets that I think we need to look at regulating those in our community. There's also a resident, you know, she's in this room today, who's a big advocate for something called combustible toilets, which is something that other communities and other countries are looking at because it's cheaper, it's environmentally friendly, and it'll help us address some of the challenges that the previous speaker just talked about. I want to bring creative solutions, and more importantly, I want to talk to the experts before bringing policies forward, especially when there's unintended consequences.
Thank you. Theresa Bond, how would you address the septic tank issues that are prohibitively cost expensive?
I would follow on what Monica just said. You have to look at the policy and find out how you can find some creative solutions. I'm not intimately aware of this issue, so you know, I just am on the outside of it and have heard about it. I have a septic system in the home I live in, and we have well water. So we self-regulate on that, but it is very expensive to have to do anything to it. I'd like to see the use of gray water systems as well. That has been a nightmare for people to be able to upgrade their homes, to be able to use gray water. I know I have friends in the mountains who have gone ahead and done it themselves, but the last thing they want is planning to come to their house and do an inspection. So anyway, I would look at policy, try to find the experts and see what we can do to do something better. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Bradford?
So I want to be clear, we don't have a septic tank issue, we have a septic tank regulation issue. The problem is the regulations. You know, a lot of us who lost our homes in the fire were on septic. They had septic tanks built out of redwood that lasted just fine. 30 years these things worked, no problem. House burns down and they have to build one of these fancy 150K new systems. That's insane that that requirement was put in place in the first place, right? So the issue here is how do we navigate that? We have to look at different solutions. We have to look at the root problem, which is people making decisions for folks who live in rural areas who know nothing about folks who live in rural areas. That should have never passed in the first place, right? That's why we need that representation. We have to look at incinerating toilets. We have to look at, they're not cheap, they're very expensive. We were looking at those in our neighborhood. We were on Big Basin Water. We also have the sewer system there. And at the time, the sewer system wasn't operating. So they weren't gonna let us move home. They were gonna let anyone in our neighborhood move home. And we presented these ideas. Can we use compostable toilets? Can we use incinerated toilets? Those were not accepted. And for no good reason. Between gray water and these other systems, there should be a solution that doesn't require people to literally lose their homes, to not be able to sell their homes, right? So all the equity that they've earned over years of paying their mortgage disappears because of this terrible regulation. It's something we could have avoided with real representation on the board, and it's something we can change going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica Martinez, you'll start with this one. And this asks for each of you to describe your problem-solving skills and to give an example. Because you're all going to be facing problems you're not familiar with, and you're going to have to work on solutions. So what is your typical problem-solving skill, and what's an example of how you utilized it?
Okay. All right, the question is about problem-solving abilities and skills, how, and an example. Okay, so I am somebody who likes to have a lot of answers. I'm a learner, I'm a grower, I'm curious. I'm always talking to people. And so when you are selecting, who's your next supervisor, please don't select the person who has all the answers, because you want somebody who's asking the questions. And that's me. I'm always curious, and I'm always bringing people together to bring diverse perspectives and adjusting my response. I feel like I'm a very organic person. In doing that, I also feel like I don't come from a very top-down perspective. I don't, as a supervisor, I'm not going to sit on a pedestal and, bring you in for your 5 minutes of comment on anything, right? I feel like I'm a part of a team. I'm a very collaborative person. And I think the best solutions come from collaboration and from diverse voices. Gosh, I was trying to think of a challenge, and it's very hard with so many challenges in my field of work. And one of them really has to do with wages at Encompass, right? We're trying to keep up with the cost of living. People can't afford to live here. It's a very competitive market. And how do we continue to keep our positions filled so we can serve our community? It's a huge nut to crack. It's something that's very challenging at the county as well. So I brought together our staff. I've asked what will incentivize them to stay. I've learned about, how they want support with their training and paying off their student loans. And we started to find creative ways to keep our positions filled. And that's the sort of thing that I'll bring to the county. There's many, many problems that need to be solved at the county, and I'll bring that approach. Thank you.
Thank you. I know it's a tough question to answer in 90 seconds. Theresa Bond?
Can you repeat the
Sure.
question, please?
So,
Thank you.
You're going to come up against problems you haven't had to deal with before, and people want to know, what is your typical method of solving problems, and do you have an example of a problem that you solved using that type of method?
Sure. Let me start out that I worked as an engineer in Silicon Valley, so root cause corrective action was my middle name. You have to find and debug the problem, and then you have to put a corrective action in place for it. I'm a middle child, so I'm a peacemaker, so I like to collaborate with people, but because of my process engineering background, I like to see the detail. I like to see the process where we got that, and I like to ask a lot of questions working with someone. Some of the issues that I would bring as an example is the opioid synthetic drug issue. In the summer of 2021, a group of us got together and said we need to bring this into the schools as soon as possible. So this is school board trustees throughout the county talking about how we bring this into the school. One of the things we found out very quickly is our policy, board policy in 2021 did not allow us to administer anything except epinephrine, like an EpiPen. So we could not train staff or ask them to administer Narcan. So through that summer, we worked on putting together a community panel that then was a reality in November, where we had doctors from Stanford, Joe Simitian, our principal, who actually found a student in the bathroom, OD'd, and was able to save them, but he could not administer Narcan. We immediately put our lawyers on it and had them come up with a policy for our board that we were able to enact before the legislation SB 10 just passed in November of this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Bradford?
So I'm an engineer, and problem solving is what I do every single day for a living. Both as a software engineer and as an enterprise support engineer, finding solutions for things that are negatively impacting the people and businesses that I run and that I work in. This is how I feed my family. So I take a very systematic approach to solving problems. You have to observe, you have to gather information, and you have to act. And those three things are incredibly important so that you can iterate and get real change. You know, I personally have had to solve problems, both personal and professional, that come into play when you live in a rural area like we do. Right? For instance, this last weekend, I bought a generator, and it worked great while I was living in the yurts. I had a pass-through installed on my house, and I went to go connect the generator to the pass-through and discovered my electricians had used a locking mechanism that didn't match with the cord that I had. So how do we solve this problem? So we went to all the hardware stores, tried to find it. Of course, it doesn't exist. Look on Amazon, boom, got it. It'll be here on Saturday. Fantastic. Doesn't solve the problem my family is experiencing, where we have no internet, we can't connect with anyone, it's cold in the house. So I run the generator, we get the extension cords up, we run the power up, through our deck and into our home. I use the lights that I bought for the construction to light the house so that we had light, and solve the problem, which was having light and having electricity so we can have the internet in our home. So you approach a problem systematically and you get it done.
Thank you. Tom Decker?
So no one can anticipate the problems that are going to happen. I watch Bruce McPherson, who is certainly a professional, where COVID and the fire hit together and he was overwhelmed, as anyone would be. So I have no idea what things will come to me if I am elected supervisor. So I have a method. It's pretty simple. If a new proposal comes to me to be funded, the first question I'll ask is it necessary? And let's say that the proposal is, well, we need air-conditioned shelters for homeless dogs. Okay, is it necessary? And if the county convince us it is necessary, then the next question is, okay, can it be done less, cheaper, quicker, more efficiently in the private sector? Can it be? And it may turn out that no, the private sector has no idea how to build shelters for homeless dogs. Okay, fine. Then the third test will be, if it must be done with county funds, can we do it from existing resources? If not, figure out where to cut. And so if you prefer not to have the potholes on Highway 9 fixed, so homeless dogs can have air-conditioned shelters, well, then we can do that. But we're not going to do new taxes or new bonds. That's the money that we have. So working with that parameter, I think I can deal with anything.
Thank you. This next question starts with Theresa Bond. And this is your freebie. You each have 90 seconds to talk about something you didn't get the chance to say on an earlier question because you were cut off.
Wait,
I want this job. I've been doing this type of work for 2 decades, and I understand the wraparound services that we provide to families today in our school system. The next level up is county. It's not an easy job. It's a 24/7 job. You're on call. You're going to be dealing with things that come up and you don't have the answers. Doing that, I bring to the party here, I'm a fresh face with a lot of contacts in Santa Cruz County. I work on the Legislative Action Committee, and I work with Senator Laird and Senator Cortese, and Gail Pellerin on things for education. I don't cross out of my lane. I didn't go to them and say, endorse me. They know me from the work that I do in my lane. Nor am I taking donations for my campaign, because I really feel the money in politics has just become ridiculous. I'm not sending out a flyer because I am environmentally conscious, and they're going to end up in the trash. So back on the back table, you'll see seeds of packets of plant seed. That's what I'm doing instead of sending a flower to all of your house. You can find out more about me at teresabond2024.com. And one of the things I thought about doing now, because I can't reach everyone because we're so far apart, is I do office hours as a trustee.
So
I can do Zoom office hours on my website.
Okay.
Thank you.
So 90 seconds. Christopher Bradford, what else would you like to say that we should catch you off short like we're doing all night long for everybody?
Okay, well, I'd like to use this time to talk about what we need in this position, what we need in a supervisor, what we need that's different. We need transparency. You know, we need an open door to the community. We need someone in there who listens and responds and is present. You know, we've had some of that, but not enough of that, especially here in the Fifth. And that's the kind of change that I want to bring to the table. You know, we've all seen the results. If we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same results. If we want change, we can't put insiders in this position, right? We can't assume that we're going to get different results if we don't take a chance. I think it's important when it comes to government, especially local government, that the persons in the seat be accountable, that they be reachable. You know, not just the name that you see in the paper, the guy you see in the grocery store. You know, the person you encounter on a day-to-day basis who doesn't just wave at you from afar, but listens and is present. You know, I'll give you an example. When Jimmy Panetta came into town a long time ago, I think for the last flooding event that we had, he and I had a deep conversation, and he talked about how important it is to show up. Right? And that makes a huge difference when you show up. You know, whether we win together or lose together, if we're together, right, we can make the change that we need to win the next time. We can iterate. But it has to start with that. It has to start with real representation that's, you know, ready to fight for us, and I see my time is up. Thank you.
Don Becker, what would you like to add to a prior question that you didn't have a chance to finish?
I don't know. Let's see. I'll tell you a story though. One of my customers, who was 96, lost his home in the fire, and they had lived there 60 years. Actually, his wife built the house, and he brought home the lumber because he worked at the lumber yard. He happened to be at one of the CCU fire meetings that there were so many the first 6 months after the fire. And in the meeting, there were folks from the county saying, fill this out, do this, we're going to be here, we're your friends, grab a sandwich, here's a blanket, thanks for coming. Lots of those meetings. So the woman who was addressing, I think I can mention her name, Cheryl Wong, used to be in charge of the environmental health department. There's 3 departments that have to clear a permit: planning, environmental health, and building. And so she just given a presentation about come to us, fill out these forms like that. And they were on a break, and she was at the table and talking to her people, and Peter rolled up next to her, he's in a wheelchair, and she was saying, it's really a shame that so many people lost their homes in the fire, but they shouldn't have been living here anyway. Before Cheryl was fired, 40 applications for fire rebuild. She had rejected 39 of them. 39 out of 40. So something really needs to be changed there. Desperately needs to be changed.
Thank you. Monica Martinez, what would you like to finish with? You didn't have a chance to finish from a prior question.
Before I start, does this go till 8 or 8:30? Do you have more questions, or do you
When
have?
can we go home?
I'm just wondering how many more questions you'll ask.
Well,
Maybe one of you guys know.
survey
Allison.
says,
I'm ready. We can go as long as you wish to go.
okay, I'll tell you what, we'll do 2 more questions.
Wait a minute.
However, we have sort of terminated at 8 o'clock to give everybody about a half an hour. If there's any other questions you want to ask.
Oh, so we're done at 8?
Yes.
5 minutes ago?
Oh, okay, so.
No, it's 8 now.
Oh, okay. 1 o'clock.
Sorry, I was just clarifying. Because I have so much I want to share.
Okay, so this will be the last thing, and then we'll go to
What is the answer?
Yes.
I think the answer is 8.
Okay.
What was the question?
Closing at 8, or is there going to be?
No, then there's
Sorry, closing state, that's what this was.
We can finish with the actual questions at 8. However, if you'd like to ask a few more afterwards, and if you are willing to stay, we can go ahead that way. Otherwise, we'll let them go home.
You don't want, no
Get home.
no closing statements?
Yes, no, this is closing statement.
Okay, closing statements.
That's the answer to this question.
Yeah.
As you can tell, I like to talk to you, and I hope this is just the beginning of a conversation. one of the items that I had on my list that I wanted to share with you that fell off the preparedness question, I didn't have time, the grant writing question, I didn't have time. It has to do with something called community resiliency centers. This is a part of the governor's budget. It's a priority of his to put community resiliency centers in communities that are susceptible to disasters. I think that's us, right? You know, given we've had 7 federal declared disasters in the last 6 years. And what they are is it's a 24-hour operation. It funds the infrastructure to help select a site, prepare it, train people on what to do during a disaster. When the site is open, say for example we have a massive storm a few days ago, people are out of power, it will allow us to have a warm spot, Wi-Fi, resources, right? A drop-in center for folks. For me, a place to pick up your kids if your kids are stuck at school, like happened to mine last year, right? We have it's a center where we can gather resources. But it's also a workforce development tool, it's a training tool, it's a resource, it's educational for the community. Now the reason why I think it's important for all of us to know about this is because there's not that many dollars in the state budget and this is going to be competitive. So going back to my competitive spirit before and knocking down the door at the state before, we've got to demand that this, not only Santa Cruz County gets a resiliency center, but this part of the county up here in SLV is where it's placed. And that's what I'm going to do for you. I know about this funding, others in the room know about this funding, and I want to see this happen during my first term as supervisor. Thank you.
Okay, so just to be clear, we're going to have the candidates give their closing statements now. And if you have questions that haven't been answered, if the candidates are available to stick around, then you can feel free to ask them, walk up and talk to them. You can visit their websites or call their offices or try to get your questions answered elsewhere. But they did want to leave a little bit of time after the questions for other things to happen in the room. So we're going to move on to the closing statements. And the closing statement starts with you, Monica.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
So believe. Who keeps turning this off? So believe it or not, I've got pages of notes up here because I like to be prepared, but I never like to prepare the closing statement because I like to speak from the heart. And I just want to share with you that I've worked to make a difference in my community my entire life. It's something that's deeply important to me. And another thing that's deeply important to me is being an authentic person and having authentic conversations and authentic relationships. I know many, many people in this room, and I hope that's been your experience with me, that I always show up as a real person with real curiosity, with my values and my heart, center of it. We're losing the mic. And that's the leader that I want to be for all of you. Now, I've heard mentioned here, I can shout. Should I? Because you know what, you're not allowed.
I've heard mention up here, you know, that we can't elect the status quo. We need fresh. We need, you know, new, different leadership. We can't have an insider. Well, look at us. You have us. You know, you get to choose a fresh voice because every single one of us represents a fresh voice. Every single one of us has a vision for this community, and it's up to you guys to choose who is the person that has the vision for our community that we share and the experience and the skills to implement it and to execute it. And so I'm really eager to earn your support, to begin a relationship with all of you, to continue that relationship as your new supervisor, and I hope that you'll join in, and I hope I can earn your support tonight. Last thing I just want to say, your ballot should arrive like tomorrow. They promised that they were mailed on Monday. And so vote early, get it back in there. We're all going to be waiting like anxiously on March 5th, and they're only going to announce the people who mailed them in early, so please let yours be in that. We'll have to wait a couple days for the people who mailed the day or who voted the day of. And please vote, please get involved, and thank you so much for being here and caring about this community.
this is convenient. I'm here because of my children and my grandchildren that put me up to this. It's actually true. So for the last 2 years I've been complaining, I can't believe they're making me do this, I can't believe they're not accepting this foundation, I can't believe on, and they're saying, you should do something about it, you should do something about it. And then my words are coming back to me, Grandpa, you can do hard things, you can do hard things, you can do something about it. And then my kids said, you can do something about it, we can help you. And so they put me up to it. They said, you have an opportunity, you've been building houses for 40 years, you know the problems, you know how to fix it, you spent a ton of money to figure this out, you should do something about this, and we'll help you. So my eldest son is my media guy, one of my 16-year-old grandsons helped me write my website, took the picture by the way. We have grandchildren that do this and do that, and all kinds of wonderful things. My wife is stalwart, for sure. But I'm doing something because something needs to be done. And we're representative of your community. It should be very interesting how this works out. So thank you for your attention. Go to my website, Decker for Supervisor. The signs are still up in some cases. If you see me done, you can put it up. That's okay too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity. So my campaign is one that's been inspiring for me in particular because of how it all started. You know, it's not something that I drove initially. Right? People who believed in me told me that we should step up and do this thing together. And that was huge. And every step of the way, it's been community driven and genuinely grassroots. Right? We don't have the huge amounts of funding. We have people who will donate their time, people who will bake the pastries and invite us into their homes, people who will speak and allow me to listen and connect with them. And if we're going to get change, we have to start with listening to each other. We have to have people in place who start thinking about community and about making changes for the community. And I've got skin in the game. I've got a lot of kids who want to move out of my house at some point. If we don't make some changes, they're not going anywhere. And I joke, but it's real, it's true. You know, the things that we are experiencing as a community are going to make it so that we don't have a community if it keeps going longer and longer. You know, we have folks that we've lost already who aren't going to come back. And each person who's disappeared because of the fire or they've been priced out, that person mattered. That person was a part of who we are. And I want to change that flow. I think we need to thrive. I think we have to invest in our communities, invest in our families, so that we can move forward and look forward to a bright future together. You know, I'd love to have one of these meetings 3 years, you know, into my first term, and to have folks not throw tomatoes at me, feel great about what we've accomplished together. And that's my goal, to accomplish things together as a community, and that's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a hard act to follow with these three, isn't it? I'm running because, first of all, this election is important for our nation and our state. And it requires folks like you're sitting right up here at the table to be role models for our younger generation and to ignite them to get out and vote. Every single person in this room, we need to send that message. Please vote. The second reason why I'm really running is because I really feel like we have been missing representation by our women. I was shocked that our Board of Supervisors has been in existence for as many years without a woman on it. That's not what it used to be. I don't know how we got that way. Did we just forget? I don't know. But I'm thrilled that we're sitting here and there's parity sitting here men to women, and we have choice. I hope you will consider voting for me. I've been doing this work for quite some time. I work with families every day and make tough choices for them. that not only affect the student, but in fact the entire family and sometimes the generations of family. So I am encouraged, and I think we have one of the best counties in California. One of the things that we are all very resilient. That is sure, and we work together, and people come out. People come out tonight. Look, everyone came out, sat here in the dark, figured out how we would get this together, and we did it. That says everything about who we are. Thank you.
Well, that does it for the moment.